Hello again. So this is episode 2 of the Andrew Wissick, podcast, Critical Thinking. Here are my jammies again, nothing flattering. Got a Carolina volleyball shirt on here. So the second issue I wanted to address was just some of the issues that we've been having, in the country, regarding drugs and race and how things and rioting and stuff like that, and why some of it's going on and some of the things for it. Gary Johnson, I was actually thinking about posting this, but Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate, posted that, and a lot of it is true about, the war on drugs being a reason why there have been so many problems as far as, these police riots are going on. Now, granted, there are other various factors, but I'll just give you a little something as far as like a little history into the systematic structural racism, the systematic racism here in America and the way things got started out and how things were are the way they are now. If you go back in the history of this country, it's known, a lot of the civil rights stuff is known, different things are known, but there's a lot of stuff that's not known that doesn't get published. And here's the deal. See, after World War II, all the GIs, all the, the soldiers were coming back home from the war and they needed places to live, and, the baby boom was happening. The baby boomers, people were having more kids, they wanted neighborhoods, they wanted to live in different places, and that's how they wanted, so they needed bigger homes. It was the baby boom, of course, duh. Anyways, if it sounds stupid, hey, I'm just speaking in layman's terms, forgive me. Anyways, so back to the baby boom. This happens, and we have all these American GIs after World War II, 1945, 1946. They're coming home from the war, and what's going on is they're, William Levitt, if you ever heard of Levittown, New York, Long Island, he was the one that essentially designed the first suburbs. He designed the suburban neighborhood, more or less, here in the United States. It was meant to be a model. It was a model, and basically it was a place where a GI and his family could start out and go and live. Well, they went and lived in those places, and they did that, and they started the suburbs. Here's the kicker, though. The people that weren't allowed to live there were black people. There were black GIs. A lot of black guys had fought in the war too. They had done that, but the difference was that they weren't allowed to live in suburban neighborhoods. So, there was a lot of spread out there was a lot of different things that put them in different areas in rougher parts of town. And initially it wasn't so bad. What happened was in that earlier time, it made for an awkward situation because of segregation, but up in the north too, in different places. But up north, what happened but also down south, J. Edgar Hoover, actually, if you ever heard the term the projects, a lot of people throw that term around, well, they live in the projects. Well, the term the projects actually comes, and this is public record, the term the projects was actually invented by J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover, the former head of the FBI, was the person who came up with the concept of the social project. His social project was he wanted to put black people and Hispanic people in neighborhoods together to see if they would kill each other. And he did that, and he also, he did that, and, he put them in neighborhoods together to see if they would systematically kill each other off. And what happened was that they were, black people, black people and Mexican people weren't killing each other, and Hispanic people weren't killing each other just because they were black and Hispanic. So he decided, well, this is a problem, because Martin Luther King and Malcolm X were becoming more powerful. So all of a sudden, what'd he do? They planted drugs in the projects. And people started doing that. So they planted drugs, and that became an issue, and that kept on, and that put a lot of drugs in the projects, and that really, really messed things up. But the other thing that happened was during that time too, see, the civil rights movement is going on in the 60s, and then it gets to about, Richard Nixon, it's public record that Richard Nixon actually thought about legalizing marijuana and different drugs because there were a lot of arrests going on at that time because hippies and black people, they were using drugs, and it was a different time. People were experimenting with them. People were doing that, and they decided the reason that, and an interesting side note too, is that the reason that marijuana was originally made illegal in this country was to get Mexicans. They were looking to take out Mexicans and lynch them because they used them, and they said that, oh well, marijuana, Mexicans are smoking marijuana and it's making them rape women and stuff like that. It's making them do that. And this was back in the 1930s, and this was when it was made illegal. That wasn't true, but that was the propaganda that they used to make it illegal in the first place. And Nixon thought about making it illegal. But then when he realized that he wanted to take out the minorities and the hippies, the people who were putting out the political information and being activists, he expanded the war on drugs. And subsequently, also with these, getting back to the projects and how this is relevant, there were drugs in the projects. Well, also the projects were located a lot of places specifically next to predominantly black colleges. The predominantly black colleges are older than the projects. And I started to put two and two together when I thought about this, because it's hard to believe that it was over 5 years ago now. I was in Greensboro, North Carolina at that time. It was funny because I had just had my first day of job training for being part-time for the United States Postal Service. I ended up doing it for 1 year. But I went to this gas station, over in North Carolina A&T. If you're familiar with Greensboro, North Carolina, there's on East Market Street there. I had stopped at that gas station a bunch of times, and I had been panhandled there a few times, but it was nothing that really threw me off. And I would go and get gas there, and I went there, and I get held up, and I go in there, and I got what happened was I went in there to pump my gas, and there were two black guys talking to two other black guys, and two black guys were saying to the other two black guys, they were saying, "Yo man, let me get a ride, and they were like, "No man, we ain't giving you a ride, I'm just here trying to pump my gas, it's late at night." And they're like, "Oh man, ain't it messed up when someone don't give you a ride?" And I just kind of was like, yeah, I'm trying to pump my gas. So I go in there, I'm not trying to get involved in anything. Well, I go back out, I'm at the pump, I'm just kind of in my own world. I'm trying to, go to sleep, I'm trying to get ready to go to bed and do what I have to do. All of a sudden, I hear a guy yelling at me. I hear him yell, "Yo man, give me your money." And I hear that, and I'm like, man, what's this guy doing? Is he panhandling me? And, I look at him, and I look up, and all of a sudden I see a guy's pointing a gun at me. And I'm like, it's just so surreal. And I've been told, I've been told some different techniques as far as just like how to avoid getting hurt. And, and I just basically what happened was I was like, all right. So I took out my wallet, and I chucked it on the ground. I didn't fight back. I wasn't stupid. The guy had a gun, and, old me might have done that. But, to my credit, I didn't get gung-ho. I wasn't stupid, and I did that. Now, the guy that pointed the gun at me, his buddy was behind him, and he was like, "Yo, man, let's go. Hurry up." So they run off, and they run off in the direction of the neighborhood. Meantime, I'm sitting there. I'm thinking there was cash in my wallet, but I'm glad I got away with my life. But in the neighborhood, I'm sitting there at the gas pump, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, because it's so surreal, I'm like, man, I just got robbed at gunpoint. And I looked over at the pump next to it, and there were the two other black guys, and I'm sitting there, and I said to those guys, I said, I'm just in a state of shock, and I said, man, I just got robbed at gunpoint. And they were like, oh man, oh, that's messed up, man. They robbed you at gunpoint. Oh man, they were asking me for a ride, man. They're like, that's a good thing they didn't ask me for a ride because, man, I would have, they probably would have robbed me.